Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into one of the most fascinating and, frankly, most frustrating puzzles of human existence, the foundational economic paradox of scarcity. We're going to unpack the incredibly complex dilemma of who gets what in a society. Sounds like a pretty simple question, right? But as we're about to see, it is a massive, massive puzzle. Let's start with the ultimate question, the one sitting right at the root of all human history. How exactly do we satisfy infinite human wants with stubbornly finite resources? I mean, think about it for a second. Why are our desires just endless? They constantly regenerate day after day, while the Earth's resources are strictly, stubbornly limited. This unavoidable clash creates what economists just call the economic problem. At its core, this is a constant, everyday struggle to figure out how to allocate resources to produce alternative goods and services, because, well, we can't have everything. Every single society, from a tiny village to a global superpower, is forced to constantly make really tough choices about relative scarcity. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at two totally opposing forces. On one side, unlimited wants. The moment one want is satisfied, boom, another one immediately pops up. You eat a big meal, your hunger is gone, but a few hours later, you're looking for a snack. That want is back. On the flip side, we have limited resources that also have alternative uses. Take a plot of land. Depending on the soil, you could use it to grow wheat, or maybe cotton or vegetables. But you can't get maximum yields of all three at the exact same time on the exact same patch of dirt. You literally have to choose. And that dynamic, that creates our inescapable economic reality. Our wants constantly compete for attention, and they all differ in intensity. Meanwhile, our actual means have alternative uses, so we're basically trapped by the fundamental problem of choice. This endless need to make the best possible use of available scarce resources is what we call the economizing of resources, and it forces every single economy on Earth to face three inevitable central problems. So, no matter what kind of system you have, an economy must ultimately answer three things. First, what to produce. What commodities are we making and in what quantities? Second, how to produce. What techniques are we using? Are we leaning on more manual labor or bringing in heavy machinery? And third, the big one, for whom to produce, who actually gets to consume all this stuff. Today, we are zooming right in on that third, highly personal question, the distribution dilemma. How does an economy decide exactly who gets more output and who gets less? This is where high-level economics slams right into everyday life. It's the ultimate challenge of, dividing up the pie among everyone who helped make it. Or, honestly, everyone who simply needs a slice. To picture how this actually plays out, let's track a harvested crop. Imagine a farmer brings in exactly 10 tons of wheat. We have to divide that physical output up to compensate everyone involved in making that harvest happen. So picture literal bags of wheat being handed out. A chunk of them goes to the workers as wages for their hard physical labor. Then the landowner takes their cut as rent for letting them use the field. Oh, and we can't forget capital compensation. We have to pay for the tractors and harvesters that did the heavy lifting. And whatever bags of wheat are left over at the very end, that's the farmer's profit for organizing the whole operation. This is the absolute heart of the for whom problem. Now, what's really fascinating here is how this whole distribution puzzle forces a pretty stark societal choice. Beyond just paying the people and machines that made the stuff, a society has to ask itself, are we ensuring a minimum amount of consumption for everybody? Like, should basic education and health services be freely available to all? Or, on the other hand, are we allocating our limited resources to produce luxury goods for the wealthy? Because remember that piece of land? Producing more of one inherently means producing less of the other. There's no getting around it. To really untangle how this tension is resolved, economists split this whole distribution problem into two distinct lenses. First, we have functional distribution, which looks strictly at those factors of production we just talked about, like the workers and tractors in our wheat harvest. And then we have personal distribution, which zooms out to look at the community level and examines broader societal inequality. Let's break both of those down. So, functional distribution. This maps out exactly how these specific social groups get their relative slice of the income pie when they produce goods and services. Basically, landowners get rent. People providing capital, like funding or machinery, earn interest. The laborers take home wages for their sweat, and those entrepreneurs taking the ultimate financial risk, they secure the profits. It's entirely 100% based on the function you play in the production process. Personal distribution, though, asks a much, much broader question.
If we step back and take a bird's eye view of a community, say looking across an entire neighborhood or city, we immediately see these obvious income gaps between different social groups. Personal distribution tackles this specific problem of inequality. It asks how the total production, or the total income, is distributed among individual households in a society, completely regardless of what specific function they played in producing it. Who ends up rich? Who struggles to make ends meet? This is the very human, very real reality of the distribution dilemma.
Naturally, every country tackles this dilemma differently. The answer to for whom to produce completely shifts depending on whether a country is operating under a capitalist, socialist, or mixed economic framework. Every single system has its own built-in logic for deciding who gets those proverbial bags of wheat. The crucial takeaway here is just how drastically different these approaches actually are. In a strictly capitalist economy, distribution is decided purely by purchasing power. If you have the money, you get the goods. A socialist economy flips that entirely, distributing based on what society determines people actually need, for example, prioritizing rural medical clinics over, say, building luxury sports cars. And a mixed economy, it tries to pull off a balancing act. The private sector churns out goods based on purchasing power, while the government sector steps in to provide essential goods based on the broader needs of the society as a whole. But wait, after a society decides for whom to produce, another massive question pops up. Is this distribution actually efficient? Now, economists have a very specific, almost mathematical definition for this word. Distribution is considered truly efficient only if it is absolutely impossible to make any one person better off without making another person worse off through redistribution. I want you to really think about that for a second. If you can move resources around to help someone without hurting anyone else, your distribution wasn't efficient yet. And that brings us to the end of our structural journey today. But I want to leave you with a rather provocative thought to ponder. If true economic efficiency strictly means that no one can be helped without taking something away from someone else, does economic efficiency inherently demand that some level of inequality must exist? Can an economy ever be both perfectly efficient and perfectly fair at the exact same time? It's a massive question, and it's one that literally shapes the policies of every government on Earth. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep questioning how the world around you is distributed, and we'll see you next time.